Hello and welcome to another installment of Gotham Sound TV. I am very excited to present to you Audio Limited Wireless and Kish Patel from the UK.
Yes.
Welcome, Kish. Welcome to New York. Welcome to Gotham Sound. He is going to talk to us about Audio Limited Wireless and their new system that is being distributed and has been acquired by Sound Devices. I think without further ado, welcome, and let's get into it.
Thank you.
I guess people ought to know I have not done a sloppy wiring job. Before we start talking about it, this is the transmitter, and yeah, we are talking, both of us, talking through Audio Limited Wireless. So take us through the range, and we'll talk.
All right. Well, this is the new A10 system, which is an evolution of the 1010, which we brought out a few years ago. The 1010 was really our first foray into fully digital radio microphone systems, but the receiver was a single channel receiver, and the market had moved on to a dual channel. A lot of people said to us, why bring out a single channel? But we had to prove the technology. I mean, we started down this path 16 years ago.
Started down the digital path.
Digital path. Yeah. So it's been a long time coming. But we knew we had some ambitious targets from day one. We wanted to make sure that we were able to achieve 2 milliseconds end-to-end delay. We had equal or better audio quality, equal or better RF performance, and all working on standard batteries. So if we were to be able to do all four together in one design, then we weren't going to bring that out. So that was the reason why we first brought out the 1010, and we proved the technology actually worked. And about 5 years ago, in that process of bringing digital to the world, we also realized that the regulators were selling off more and more spectrum. So one of the key features of the A10 and the modulation scheme, which has been designed by Audio, was to actually increase the channel density, to increase spectrum efficiency, because the regulators are selling more and more of the spectrum. You've lost the 700 meg band, and now it's down to 600 megahertz. Europe is going the same way as well. Yeah. So the idea was, how many channels can we actually pack working together without compromising audio quality and RF performance? And the result is, 20 channels simultaneously, evenly spaced at 400 kilohertz. And you get on an 8 megahertz European TV channel, you get 20 channels working together, and proportionally less, or 15 in a 6 megahertz TV band.
Sure.
So that was the main drive, but in all of that, we wanted to ensure that the audio quality was primary, because we had a reputation in the market for having really good audio quality, and we wanted to keep on with that and just make sure that was there.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would take this opportunity to tell people, as a New York sound person, Audio Limited had a huge footprint in New York. Right. I remember my first AES was maybe 1993. Murray Rosenblum was the distributor.
Yes, that's right. He
sort of pulled me aside and shook keys in front of the transmitter, and said, "Listen, there's no distortion when you do that." And all of the mixers that I sort of grew up respecting who worked in New York always used Audio Limited Wireless.
Sure.
And so it's exciting to see you make another push with a new product and new technology.
Yeah.
I will say, and you've talked about some of it, there's wideband systems on the market now.
Sure.
And wideband digital systems. But the features that these have really do set them apart, I think.
Yes, yeah. I mean, we did a lot of work again on the original 1010, and one of the things was to actually fit. The original 1010 had 3 bands in the receiver and the transmitter to cover the sort of 470 to 700 megahertz band. So with 3 chunks of 100 megahertz with slight overlaps on all of those. And then when we realized we needed to squeeze 2 true diversity channels into the same package as we brought in the single. But of course also, we wanted to try and have one receiver that covered everything.
Right.
And there are certain aspects of that. There are compromises in design to do a wideband receiver. But with the digital technology, it allowed us to also to have tracking filters because it's a more hostile world that we're actually in as well. So we've built in tracking filters as well as having that wideband switching ability.
Which is almost a requirement these days, I think, if you're
Yes.
going to get into wideband technology.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So you've got to be able to restrict any erroneous RF leakage from other. You've got video transmitters, although they may be working at 5 gigahertz.
Well,
You've got spurious, which come straight into the
yeah,
UHF spectrum.
and at the lower end, walkie-talkies.
Yes, yeah, and these are 5-watt
Yes.
devices which come on and suddenly splatter the receivers and everything else. So we're in a situation, and of course. We've got different frequencies being used for walkie-talkies around the world. So it's trying to cope with walkie-talkies, with Wi-Fi on sets. It's a really complex RF environment these days. So trying to get that immunity as well.
I want to get into some of the functionality and the specific menus and stuff. But before I do, I don't know if people can get a sense here. If we go to the overhead. This is an iPhone. This is a really, really small receiver. We've sort of put a quarter here for comparison. I mean, it's how's that? It's unbelievably dense what you've done. Yeah. The other thing that I really like, sorry, Jared, one more time to the overhead, and I promise to keep it on the mark. The way you've angled the display, just the sort of ergonomics of it, thank you, is really great.
No, good. I mean, we like the idea of having the versatility because we talk to 10 soundmen; they've all got 10 different sets of ideas.
Yeah.
And we try to take whatever people ask for, and we are very much of a company that reacts to customer requirements rather than trying to design something and saying, "Oh, here you go, play with that," and then find out the shortcomings there. So we've been listening to the market for a long time, and we wanted to try and achieve something which is ergonomically useful, but also the ability with the software in the units itself. To make it very intuitive to work with. So you've got a really simple menu system, and pretty much within about 2 seconds of showing somebody, they know their way around the menu system. So it's not very difficult to do pretty much anything you want on the transmitter. So very intuitive.
And are there any restrictions in terms of the way you set the frequencies or the order that you set them in? Or
not really, no. You've got a great deal of flexibility. And as I said, with the way that digital modulation works, and because you can have even frequency spacings, what we designed is a frequency selection which allows you to first of all select a TV channel, and then you just select TV channel 23, for example, TV channel 23, and you have 1 to 15 to give you your 15 channels in 6 megahertz, and you can see the frequency as well. So essentially, every 400 kilohertz, you can put a carrier up, and they don't interact with each other.
And they scan?
Yeah, so you've got on the receiver, you've got the ability to scan. So you've got a spectrum analyzer like scan, and you can step forward and backwards. And actually, from that scan function, you can set the frequency of the receiver from there.
And user groups? Can it do user groups?
We don't do user groups at the moment, but if there is a requirement as we go along, it's a software function that I'm sure that we can probably develop as we go along.
Fair. I would argue for reality television that idea of party dialing is
okay.
That would be my vote.
Requirement.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But it's good to know that you guys are receptive and there's a feedback loop and it results in action. And
yes,
it's good.
It will.
And external control.
We have external control via the app, which is downloadable. It's in an iOS or Android form. And from that, you can change the gains, the microphone, the LF cut settings. You can put it into sleep mode. You can wake it up remotely because it's a Bluetooth app. And you can change the frequency from that.
And that's the transmitter or the receiver?
It's a transmitter only. But we do send the metadata from the transmitter to the receiver, so you can actually check to see what your settings are on your transmitter from that.
Okay.
So and that's a simple button press on the receiver just to see which one you're set to, and you can see the LF cut.
Do you want to... We're sort of jumping around, I apologize, but do you want to show us?
Okay, so on the app itself, you have, so you can just select any receiver, transmitter, sorry, and then you've got, I'm sorry, this has gone into,
There we go. Nice.
okay, so there you go. So you've got gain, LF cut, RF power. So you have 3 power levels, low, high, and medium. And the low is 10 milliwatts, medium is 20, and high is 50 milliwatts.
Do you feel like power settings in digital transmission are different? It's a sort of different way of thinking about it than it is in analog transmission?
Yes. I mean, with digital, because you've got the modulation is fully occupied at any given, the mask is fully occupied at any given time. You know, you're measuring the average power, and therefore peak power could be higher, but the average power is around about 50 milliwatts.
Got it.
And we've always concentrated our efforts on having maximum sensitivity on the receivers rather than having, you know, the difference between 50 milliwatts and 100 milliwatts is 3 dB.
Right.
So 3 dB extra sensitivity on the receiver is the equivalent of doubling the output power in your transmitter. So,
right.
And of course, digital is very power hungry.
Yes.
And therefore, you know, it's trying to get that balance of battery life versus the runtime, and making sure that we get that balance right in the field.
Yeah. And this app talks to the transmitter via Bluetooth, so range of 10 feet, 15 feet is not unheard of.
Yeah, we've deliberately left it at a short range. It's not designed for long range stuff at all. It's designed so that when it's on the costume or the artist, you can come up fairly close and just change the parameters without you actually having to get to the transmitter itself.
Right.
So through clothing.
Or through you know, more like audio or infrared or something like that. Yeah, that's perfect. That's great. And then those flow through to the receiver.
Yes, yeah.
And of course, on the receive side, I would hope that there's some integration with SuperSlot.
Yes, you do. You do. Well, this is a standalone unit with the exit cables coming out of the cable grommets here on the side. So if you're standing it upright on the bag, you're not standing on the connectors themselves.
Brilliant.
And then you've also got the ability to just take off 4 screws and just change it to a, excuse me for a second, to change it to a SuperSlot adapter.
Got it.
Very simple, and the plate to get the spacing right to make it all happen.
Yeah, I mean, the ergonomics of Audio Limited is something that I've always appreciated.
Right.
It's really smart.
And of course, on the transmitter, we've made a number of changes as well, because we decided fairly early on to have Lavalio input. We have a balanced microphone or a balanced line input, plus you have 48-volt phantom powering for pretty much every microphone that's on the market. We've tried it with the really power-hungry Schoeps microphones and the lower power microphones, of course, as well.
And the connector
is a standard 3-pin LEMO. So essentially, if you used to Sennheiser 3-pin LEMO wiring, we follow the same protocols and it's the same pin outs.
Great.
And we also have an automatic detection circuitry in there. So if you were to have a 48-volt phantom powered microphone that you're using and you pull that connector out and you put in a Lavalier microphone, it automatically senses the Lavalier being plugged in, and it automatically switches off the 48 volts.
So it won't send 48 volts to fry your tiny electret.
Yeah.
And to my knowledge, and I welcome internet correction, it's the only transmitter that can auto sense and do both 48 volt phantom and lavalier wiring.
That's correct. Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, obviously, if we go to the overhead one more time, it's got this sort of boom adapter.
It's a boom adapter.
And makes using it on a wireless boom very, very simple.
Absolutely, yeah.
Brilliant.
And the quality of the audio, when you listen to that, we've had a lot of really good feedback from that, because the preamp is really nice and the limiter action is very nice. And we've had quite a number of people who've said, it really does sound like a line microphone now. Yeah. Because it's, it's a full bandwidth, 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz, and basically gives you that wonderful depth for audio that people have been used to.
Great. That's fantastic. At this point, I think I want to open it up. Are there any questions? Anybody, everybody with us so far? Oh.
I do have one question. Is extending the Bluetooth range possible through software updates? I would see 100 feet range very useful.
No is my simple answer to that one. It really is designed for close proximity. I mean, to do 100 feet would be very difficult because, I mean, the transmitter casing is fully metallized, and therefore it is there for a purpose, and that's to screen all of the RF coming out of the unit.
Right.
The Bluetooth sits just behind the screen itself, so it's a question of the orientation will dictate roughly how much you're going to get. So,
and Bluetooth relies on two-way communication, so even if you try to boost it one way, it wouldn't reach back.
That's right, yeah.
All right. Fair, yeah. No, I mean, I think it's interesting, and I love talking to manufacturers to understand the different philosophy. And
Right.
yeah, I mean, obviously there's other technology that's meant for facility-wide or set-wide transmission from a card or from a front-of-house position. But this is really meant for drama, film production, and documentary film production, where you know, a sound person can get relatively close with the app.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that's been our current market for the last 50 years. It's addressing the needs of the film sound mix of the drama, the E&G documentary guys, who invest the equipment their own money in their equipment rather than the facilities companies. And you know, we want to make sure that we brought out a product which absolutely fitted that marketplace.
Now, I do have an idea for extending the range.
Okay.
Can I pitch it to you?
Sure.
You know, do like how they do the Zigbee stuff, where you'd have a long range technology and then the Bluetooth gateway, basically.
Okay.
So if somebody wanted to do that,
you must spare time.
you're among both.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyways, if that's a thing. But in any case, yeah. I mean, I really do appreciate the thoughtfulness in it, and the sound quality is incredible. So yeah. What else would you like to show us?
Well, you know, you have, of course, you know, the simple menu system is really people have commented. I mean, you can see this. That's the metadata, and you can also, let me just show you. You can switch the screen upside down by just 2-button press, and there's a menu option as well.
Yeah, that's great.
But to get into the menu, it's a very simple go along, scroll along frequency. But let me show you what we meant by frequency. So you've got TV channel, which is highlighted, and a sub-channel.
I'm sorry, Kish, are these American market, they're American TV channels?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, you've got a small X in that corner there. Well, that denotes the 6 megahertz region, which is the US.
Right.
But in the menu system, you've got the TV channel map, which you can say X, Y, and Z. X is 6 megahertz, Y is 7, and Z is 8 megahertz. So if you're traveling abroad, you can switch it, and you can actually have everything at your hand.
Great.
The other aspect that we haven't talked about is the fact that you can actually manually tune in 25 kilohertz steps. So we're not expecting people to just say, okay, well, this is the best thing since sliced bread. I'm going to throw away my analog systems and switch over to digital. We'd love that to happen, but I think there will be a slow progression because it is an investment.
I'm smiling because I was one of the volunteers that helped coordinate the press at the U.S. presidential debates.
Okay.
And you know, squeezing 500 frequencies was a challenge, and figuring out all the manufacturers' offsets and how to get there. And I'm smiling because that is so intuitive.
Yeah.
And you know, would have been you know, at the front of the line in terms of ease of coordination.
Yes, yeah. And of course, we still follow the very strict ETSI mask of 200 kilohertz for a radio mic channel.
Yes.
So essentially, if you want to use the A10 digital along with your analog systems, all you need to do is actually fit the digital into the analog frequency scheme, and it all just works very nicely together.
Right, yeah.
So from that perspective, you can still, it all plays nicely together. You don't have to say, actually, well, I want to separate this totally because that will interfere with this. Doesn't necessarily work.
But along those lines, in terms of separation, the receiver's very clearly broken into TV channels.
Yeah.
Is that a worthwhile way of approaching scanning, where you find a clear TV channel and then pack them all in that single TV channel?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it makes sense because wireless microphones share the spectrum with television channels around the world. So it's a well-known fact that, you know, you can use TV channels accordingly. I mean, in the UK, we use TV channel 38 for nationwide use.
Yes.
In the US, you know, there are, depending on statewide allocations, you talk about TV channels, although manufacturers sometimes refer to them as frequencies or blocks.
Right.
And they're not necessarily referring to the TV channels from the block aspects of it. So we thought, well, okay, well, let's simplify this, because everyone does use TV channels. And if we can say, okay, find a clear TV channel and then just utilize, if you've got that, you just go, say, TV channel 23 and then 1 to 15.
Yes.
In any combination without any problems with interference, intermodulation and everything else like that. So it's one of the clear advantages of being able to put everything together and in a condensed, spectrum efficient way.
And in terms of sound quality, I have my output options as analog and AES. Is that?
Yes, it's again in the software. You just switch it to AES. So in the standard output mode, you've got 2 XLR outputs for your analog outputs. If you switch it to AES, the AES stream comes out on channel 1. So it's all done internally on the receiver itself.
Perfect.
You can also flip the phase. So if you've got a microphone that's out of phase, you flip it in the receiver, and it corrects it out on the output there.
That's great. Brilliant. I'm really happy you came by, and yeah, it's fantastic. Any other questions, Joe?
Yeah, we have a couple.
Oh, good.
So this question we'd like to ask is, any smaller talent packs on the way?
This is our first generation, of course. You know, you've got the receiver and the transmitter, and we know people are going to ask for a smaller transmitter. And I have to say, you know, people have always liked the mini transmitter which we produce for the analog systems. That,
yeah.
You know, very nice curves. And the thinking currently is you know, how do we make it functional? How do we make it all work and fit everything into that same transmitter size? And ideally, yes, we want to make it as small as possible.
I mean, the one thing I would say too is that the ergonomics of this transmitter, you know, there are no corners, there are no sharp corners.
Yes.
So although it is not as small as as some of the transmitters on the market, it's also not as bulky.
No.
Either.
It is very tactile, and it's deliberately so. We wanted to try and make sure that, you know, we can try and hide it. And the thing that people find difficulty with hiding things is having something which has got a lot of corners on.
Yeah.
On tight costumes, anything with a curve will make it blend into the costume.
Exactly. While we're talking autonomy, battery life.
We've actually got them on the user guides, but it's essentially alkaline batteries will give you about 2 hours continuous use at 50 milliwatts. You go to lithiums and you'll get 7+ hours on the transmitter. So, you know, nickel metal hydrides will give you that compromise in between. And the other thing that people need to bear in mind is people have said, well, you know, digital is very power hungry and it gets the units get hot. But these have been on for a while now.
Yes.
And the lithium technology doesn't allow it to get very hot. What we found is actually nickel metal hydrides, as they get to the sort of last third, the current goes rapidly shoots up, and it's the batteries themselves that heat up.
Yes.
Yes, the transmitters are power hungry, but it's the batteries heating up which give you that effect
That's
rather than the actual transmitter itself. Yes, it does. You know, digital does take much more power than analog, but the batteries play an awful big part in that.
That's funny. Something about the internal resistance dropping, I suppose. Yeah, that's great. It's. I would love for you guys. I can't wait for you guys to have the small transmitter, but this will solve a lot of issues in the meantime.
Yeah, we believe so.
Yeah. All right. Any other?
Yeah, just a few more. There are questions about cost.
Transmitters list price is $1,195, and the receiver is $2,195, I believe. And we start to ship towards the end of this month in the US.
Great.
Yeah. Great. Another question is about firmware updates, especially with the plans to address the repacking of TV stations around the US. What is the firmware update process? And is that something that there needs to be new boards in the future? Have you looked at the future of this and that sort of thing?
Okay, well, currently the transmitters we're shipping in two bands, Band A and Band B. The Band A covers from 470 to 450, and Band B covers from 518 to 606. So those two are the only transmitters bands which are available in the US, and the receiver covers all of that in one. Mm-hmm. So in terms of being ready for what's happening in the US, it's not an issue. There is no requirement for an upgrade to the firmware to allow us to use these units in the US market.
But are these field firmware upgradable?
Yes, you do have a micro SD card in the receiver, which will allow you to update the firmware in the transmitter. Mm-hmm. And on the receivers, you've got a micro USB slot. If you've got the overhead camera there,
yeah, right there.
Let me just put that there. So you've got a micro USB slot on the AXLR version, and if you've got the SL version, there will be the ability to update the firmware through the firmware in the super slot from that perspective as
Got it. All right. So, that's cool.
And I have one last question. Is it possible in the future to do software updates in the American version to address the features available in Europe?
At this moment in time, this is not possible, but it may be in the future. We don't know.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
That's all we can really say. Awesome. All right. So yeah, I was mistaken. Shipping in 2 weeks. Shipping imminently. Yeah. And yeah, we look forward to getting our first batch. Excellent, Kish. Thank you so much for dropping by.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for having me.
It's good to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you, Pete.
Thanks everybody for watching. We have a Boom Operator Masterclass with Ken Strain, April 29th in Long Island City. Very excited about that. And Gotham Sound Expo is Saturday, May 5th in Long Island City. That's going to be here at the Gotham Expo. Always visit the video archives at gothamsound.tv. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest news. And please send ideas to info@gothamsound.com. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Kish. Thank you, crew. See you next week.